Yeah, well, I think that, as I've been saying for a while, I mean, I was talking about this. I did a whole show on this after I did that debate because it was such a fascinating dynamic to me. But the thing you could see was that really what separates Charlie Kirk from Ben Shapiro or Jordan Peterson or Dave Rubin or any of these other guys was that he had to keep dealing with the young people. Like that was his whole job. And not just that he had to deal with them, but he had to keep young activists on board to volunteer. These are like the true believers, in a cause. These aren't, grand operatives. And you got to do this with a demographic where support for it. I mean, it's like, I don't know what other thing I could even compare it to. I think maybe for people who are a little bit younger, maybe you can't appreciate this because things have changed so much with like the rise of wokeism and the LGBTQ stuff. But like gay marriage, I guess I kind of for like a while in the country, gay marriage was kind of a controversial issue. And then the pro-gay marriage side just won out. Like it just went from being like a divisive 50-50 issue to being an issue where it was like 80-20. It was like everyone's just like, dude, no one cares. Like let gay people get married. Who cares? And no, that may have changed after, the decade that followed. But, it's an issue where like young people, I mean, Megyn Kelly herself said the other day, she went, no one under 30 supports Israel. Like it's basically, it just does. So he's in this terrible place. And his whole job, like you said, is to keep the big tent going, the big tent that can win in November. But there is no tent big enough if it doesn't include Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly. I mean, like if you have to, it's one thing for him to say, I have to exclude Nick Fuentes, but to have to exclude Tucker Carlson, well, then where's there is no tent left. People like Ben Shapiro, he's removed. He's in his studio. He's still got, his backers and his operation. He doesn't have to necessarily engage with the fact that, say, on Twitter, everybody's calling him out for what the obvious, the foreign spy that he is. But Charlie Kirk had to go to these events. Yeah. So he had to find a way. And I think you could see it all over him. And I don't mean this, I'm not adding anything. I told you, I gave the audience the information I had, which is just that basically he told me, we don't actually disagree that much on this topic. But everyone could see in his public appearances, the struggle in this dynamic. And then it became this thing that it reinforced itself. So he would go, okay, well, I got to keep this together somehow. Maybe I moderate a debate on the subject. Then I can still present myself to my young activists as I'm the guy who's willing to have this debate. Right. But to the Zionist donors, that was way too far. And so now they're furious at him. And as you know well, Max, I'm sure you experienced this quite a bit in your career. I've experienced this quite a bit myself. There is some personality trait or characteristic to the ultra hardcore Zionists that for whatever reason, when you start drifting a little bit, they don't go, hey, I get your point and I see why you're asking these questions and this sure is a complicated issue. Let's come back here. When you start drifting this much, they go, you're Adolf Hitler. Yep. And you go, wait, what? I'm Adolf Hitler? Like, no, I'm like just drifting. And then it just has this effect of pushing a lot of people further and further. It pushes some of them to say, you know what, I am Adolf Hitler, which I don't think is the best response. But it just, and you could see Charlie was dealing with that already. It's one of the things that really backs up your reporting, I think, that really, because Bill Ackman's coming out going, no, what are you talking about? Josh Hammer, all these guys. It was the friendliest of meetings. Yeah, right. It's like, okay, well, 48 hours later or something like that, he's on with Megyn Kelly. And it doesn't seem like that's the vibe that he's describing, Yeah, you should, edit in that clip right now just to illustrate your point. I mean, he was complaining about stakeholders and donors giving him less space to criticize Israel than Israelis. And he seemed just visibly agonized. This is, what Charlie Kirk is dealing with is he's a Protestant coming from a very different cultural environment than a lot of the Jewish Likudniks he was dealing with. And what they deal with is when they're kids, if they start to question Israel, they get smacked down so hard in their own families. I was lucky, at least my nuclear family, they're not Zionists. And they understood why I was disgusted by the whole thing. So I never faced that. And there's just it's a different culture when you grow up in this hermetically sealed communal Jewish world
there's no space on the Israel issue unless you're like ultra Orthodox and Satmar. And so they projected that onto Charlie Kirk. And he was, from what I heard from people who knew him, was he was shocked by the way that they would speak to him, just by the rudeness of it. But that's the way they were spoken to about the issue.
Yeah.
And that then their entire identity focuses around this one pillar because, you're American, you're Jewish, it's a secular society, you're a minority, very easy to intermarry, but there's always this Israel. And that's something that you can just easily wave an Israeli flag and denounce the Palestinians, and you'll be recognized by your community as a good Jew. And if you give a lot of money, you can actually be considered a macher, like a big guy. So that's how they saw it. And I don't think Charlie Kirk fully understood that. So he was getting alienated by them. I mean, there were also these rumors that he was converting to Catholicism. Now, what I do know is he was attending, or what I have heard from people who even were in this Catholic church, was that I believe was in Phoenix, he was actually attending Catholic Mass, or he had attended Catholic Mass. So we can kind of leave it there. But if he had converted to Catholicism, that would have been a big blow to Zionism as well, because of you're basically abandoning Christian Zionism and this concept of Israel as covenant land, the idea of the Jews as a chosen people to fulfill various dispensations in order to reach the day of revelation. I mean, it's all gone. So they're threatened by that. There's a lot of attacks on Candace Owens for mentioning that. But this seems to have been a reality that he was dealing with, and we'll never know where he would have landed and how it would have ended up. But had he landed in a different place, he would have lost a lot of money. And I've been hearing from a number of people I never thought I would ever meet in my life on the right, who are in right-wing media, who were kind of moved by what I wrote because it resonated with them because they were having a similar experience where they're working in right-wing or Trump-adjacent media organizations, and everything's going fine. And then all of a sudden they start questioning Israel, and their boss starts freaking out, either because the boss themselves is afraid or because the boss themselves is a Zionist. And then they realize there's someone in the office who just seems to only represent Israel, and they don't know why they're there. And, one person I can point to, just because this is played out publicly, is Tim Pool. I'm sure you've been on his show. I've been on his show. Like, I found him, I was on his show like right after October 7th, and he was pretty open-minded about the whole thing. He let me speak my mind. I didn't really feel like I was being shut down. And he gets an invitation to meet with Netanyahu, I believe, in the first of the 4 trips that Netanyahu took in recent months. And they meet at Blair House outside the White House. There's a small group of conservative influencers, and it's Chatham House rules. No one's allowed to come out of that meeting with any details. You're not allowed to say what happened. And you're meeting with someone who's like involved in the worst war crimes we have ever witnessed, who's presiding over a Holocaust. And you're not allowed to ask a tough question. And then Tim Pool goes back to his studio, and no one's supposed to ask him about it. But I think someone did ask him about it on air. And like, you could see he was like a deer in the headlights. And that, so basically when you get involved in conservative media, you don't know it, but you can't really, almost no one can question this because of where the money is coming from. And if you actually get involved directly, like you start going to these influencer summits with Bill Ackman, and then you take the trip to Israel and you kiss the wall and all that, it's like joining the Firm. The Firm, the early 90s book by John Grisham, where it's like you get in a law firm, and if you leave, you learn certain secrets, and if you leave, it doesn't work out too well for you. And Charlie Kirk was in the Firm.
Dude, what happens? I got to ask you, right? Because like I have somewhat famously never been to Israel. I did after that. I did get the invite, which I turned down. I was told this came from the top, that I was invited there. And I was like, no, I'm not going. I don't know what it is you guys do and what these you have to come to Israel trips are, but I'm not going over there. I'm not doing any of this. I've read too much about this, and I don't want to go take a picture crying in front of your wall, and I don't want to come back to my hotel and find 3 people are already inside it, or like things have been rearranged to intimidate me. Like, no, I'm not doing this. But from your understanding, and you've been there many times, what is it that they do to these guys on these trips? Why do they always want people to come to Israel? And what is it that happens on these trips?
Well, first, this is our first time talking, so I would say I would really urge you to go. Just fly in there, fly to Ben Gurion International Airport, get out and just see it as a tourist, and then go to Jerusalem, go to East Jerusalem, see how Palestinians live. You can just walk right in there. And I can tell you what bus to take from there for $2 into Ramallah, and you'll go through the apartheid wall, and then you'll be in occupied Palestinian territory, and you can just see it all for yourself. And I really recommend everyone do that. And there are various ways to make contact with local activists and NGOs, even Breaking the Silence, the former Israeli soldiers, NGO will take you on a tour of occupied Hebron in the West Bank and show you what they had to do there as soldiers. And I think that's all you really need to see to understand apartheid, is to go to H2 in Hebron, which is an entire part of a Palestinian city that has been sectioned off for some of the most fanatical genocidal settlers. And Shahada Street, which goes through the middle of H2, is a Jews only street. There are actually signs that tell you where Palestinians can walk and where Jews can walk. And you can go there and see that yourself. And you can talk to the soldiers who are there on duty. And they don't actually many of them don't like the settlers, and they're really bored and annoyed by the whole thing, but they're just following orders to participate in this genocidal project. So I think it's like, once you see that and you see apartheid for yourself, it really does give you an important authority that I think someone with your communication gifts should get. So if there's any way I can help, let me know. And everyone watching this, you should be encouraged to do that. Those who go on the AIPAC trips, which all freshman members of Congress get invited on, do not have that experience. And I personally had a similar experience because I went on Birthright Israel when I was much younger and was just starting to explore this issue, and sort of I would characterize my mentality at that point in my life when I was 22 years old as liberal Zionist. After returning, I shifted permanently against Zionism because I started paying closer attention to what was happening. The second Intifada began, but we were like wined and dined. There was very little sleep. It was like an electrifying experience. There was so much group camaraderie. On the Birthright trip, it's also this gigantic sex vacation. They're encouraging as much sex as possible, because then you'll associate Israel with eros, with like eroticism, but also they want to encourage generational continuity, because, as Jews, we don't go and convert other people. We only multiply through procreation and marriage. And it really, like, they openly encourage you to get drunk and push you into like party spaces. I did a video about this I think it's called Ziowana, for the Real News Network, where I went back and covered as a journalist a Birthright mega event that Netanyahu spoke to. All the big billionaire donors were there. What's his name? Michael Steinhardt, who's one of the biggest Zionist donors in the US, told me, I said, do you want them all to get married? Is that why you're doing this? And he said, not just married, they should just do it tonight. Like get him in bed tonight. It was like sick. And then they literally push him into a nightclub setting. And like some of the soldiers are like there, like young, attractive female and male soldiers will start dancing with them. And like, I would see that take place. The last night of my Birthright trip, I was like exhausted, and I woke up and like there was a knock on my door, and a young woman had just come to the door who I'd never met before. And she was just like offering herself up. And I mean, maybe some people watching this will laugh at me, but I just shut the door and went back to sleep. I woke up later that night, and my roommate it was on the balcony looking out over the Dome of the Rock, getting a hand job. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And the freshman members of Congress, there's like a famous story or infamous story that I think even Politico reported, where they all got so drunk in Tiberias, at Lake Tiberias, in Tiberias, the city of Tiberias in northern Israel, that they took off their clothes, and at least one member of Congress took off his clothes, Ben Quayle, who was the son of former Vice President Dan Quayle, and jumped into the Sea of Galilee. And they just had this drunken kind of like midnight swim. That's what they're doing to them as well. And then, a lot of them are like used car salesmen from suburban Texas who could have never gone to Israel, who have these Christian Zionist biblical beliefs, and they believe, and they're taken on a free trip to see the land of the Bible. Palestinians don't even exist in their mind. Yeah. They see Muslims as terrorists. So Jim Jordan is one of them. And my friend Liam Cosgrove from Zero Hedge.
I know Liam, yeah.
He was interviewing Jim Jordan. I just was like standing next to him while he was interviewing him at this this kind of like weird conservative press gaggle where like young members of different Republican members of Congress could engage with different conservative media outlets. And I was kind of tagging along, waiting for Randy Fine to walk in. Anyway, he asked Jim Jordan about his support for Israel. And Jim Jordan says, Israel is above all other issues. It's not a political issue. It's a spiritual issue. And there's no criticism allowed. I've been there 6 times, and I'm looking forward to going again. And there is no questioning the alliance with Israel. And so that's how I think the Republican members of Congress see it. Then for the Democrats, it's like, it's becoming uncomfortable for them. A lot of them aren't going on these trips, but you have like Democrats like Wesley Bell, who are basically just paid tools of AIPAC. And if they refuse to go, they're out of Congress. Like Wesley Bell was brought into Congress specifically to destroy Cori Bush because she was taking up the mantle of the Palestinian cause. And AIPAC spent like $12 million to get this backbencher St. Louis alderman into Congress with Super Bowl style ads. And none of the ads, by the way, had anything to do with Israel. They set up these stealth packs like Americans for Democracy and Fairness. And Cori Bush voted against Joe Biden's supplemental bill on the, it's all like, and it's all that. So they just have to go. And then it's like a humiliation ritual for them where they have to go to the wall and they have to go to the Gaza border. And I mean, did you see the picture that the Democrats or various senators took with Netanyahu?
Yep.
And Cory Booker, you can just see his forehead behind someone because Netanyahu owns him. Cory Booker's whole career is sponsored by Zionist billionaires. And he had to be in that picture, but you could tell he didn't want to show his face. So that's the Democrats. But yeah, on these trips, the other thing that happens on these trips for lawmakers is they're all under surveillance. Like their hotel rooms are surveilled. Everything is being watched, and Israel's gathering tons of intelligence on the U.S. government.
Yeah, it is something. I mean, it's, part of the dynamic with all of this is just that now that kind of the corporate media has just been, kind of destroyed in the marketplace, like and as particularly young people are just not getting their news from corporate media outlets. It's almost there's this interesting dynamic where Israel, the Israeli lobby, it was always like the third rail of American politics. But once you get into this new decentralized media and they don't have that control and you're just allowed to talk about this, and even some people could argue against it, it's just too bizarre for people to not see it. Like, it's so freaking weird. I mean, I remember even being struck by, so I was reading your piece, or was it your piece or was someone else at the Gray Zone? I think it was yours, but where you were, it was a piece about Charlie Kirk and the meeting in the Hamptons. And you ran a picture of the guy who you just mentioned. I'm sorry.
Xavier DeRousseau.
Yes. Him. And it was, and one of the girls who it's
Emily Wilson.
Is it Emily? Yeah, I think I debated her on Piers Morgan once, which was, like
That
I literally, if I'm remembering this correctly, I think her big thing to me, we were like debating on Pierce Morgan, and I might be confusing her with someone else, but I think it was her. And she was like, well, Egypt occupied Gaza and Jordan occupied the West Bank, and I don't hear you criticizing them. Why is that? And I was like, well, primarily because it ended in 1967. And she was like, okay. Like, it's just like the most just ridiculous guy. But anyway, so there's a picture of the two of them, and it's them that they post online in Bridgehampton at the time of this meeting, which people don't know, I think is about a half hour away from East Hampton. It's like another one of those fancy schmancy towns. And they're like at this posh hotel, and they're kind of taking these glamour shots. And even just that, I'm like, what is this? Like, what is this? I thought, are you in the business of, like, we talk about politics? Like, do you have deep convictions about issues of policy that you believe in because you have like a worldview and principles, or are you like an Instagram 20-year-old chick taking like bikini pictures? Like, what? Like I'm just saying, like, like when I go to, like, I got a lot of friends, in broadly speaking, our camp in this world. If I go to Austin, Texas, like I might meet up with Scott Horton and grab a steak, but like we're gonna grab dinner and talk. We're not like, let's go take pictures of us posing outside. Like, it's just seems like such a bizarre thing. There's like this bizarre cultural dynamic amongst the crazy pro-Zionists influencers. It's like they're just like in a different world playing a different game than those of us who are just talking about issues that matter.
Well, it's creepy. I mean, they're actors. They sort of were like, a lot of them were basically on Bill Ackman's casting couch, and they have no principles. They're vapid. And, some of them, I feel sorry for them because they're coming from a lot less privilege. And therefore, this is like a big opportunity for them to move up in class by getting basically Jewish billionaire money to shill for Israel. That's where the black influencers come in. And there is a major component of this. Wealthy, right-wing, racist Jews buying black people to do their bidding. Bill Ackman was part of a WhatsApp group of 50. It sounds like an anti-Semitic conspiracy, or like something, a film commissioned by Joseph Goebbels. But Bill Ackman was part of a WhatsApp group of 50 Zionist billionaires who were planning basically operations after October 7th to stop student activism, specifically at Columbia University, against the genocide. And one of their major action items on their agenda was paying black personalities, public figures, to do what they wanted, to speak against Palestine solidarity activism. And so that's why you see such a disproportionate number of black influencers at that Hampton summit, along with the attractive women that they can get there. Emily Wilson was previously critical of Israel. She said so publicly. Like, there are tweets screenshotting what she said before Bill Ackman got to her. Afterwards, she was on her way to Israel to kiss the wall, and Xavier de Rousseau was sent to a Gaza humanitarian foundation, or I would call them Gaza Holocaust facilitator aid hub in Gaza, where he mocked the population for starving and claimed that Hamas was eating all the ramen, and that's why Hamas leaders were taking Ozempic. And I mean, that's what he was being paid to do. So this is the future of pro-Israel media. It's just basically prostitutes being paid by Zionist billionaires. And why are they doing it? They're afraid that white and black Christian men from military communities, basically communities where the military is one of the only options to be able to pay for college or move up in class. And so they join in very high numbers. Also Latino males who voted for Trump in record numbers, that they will not support Israel, and therefore they will not fight Israel's wars. And so they need to keep them mobilized and motivated. Once they start questioning a ground war in Iran, that could be a big problem. So, I mean, that's the long-term agenda here. And it's all paid for. It's all bought and paid for, which alienates people and it fuels anti-Semitism. It really looks like some kind of anti-Semitic conspiracy playing out. It's not good for the Jews. We're like 3% of the population. and you have this billionaire class that so many Jews I know despise. I hate them.
Yeah.
And they are basically ruling through fear, intimidation, manipulation, and bribery against the wishes of a majority, increasingly a majority of the population. And like, we're being used as Jews, all Jews, as a human shield for them and for Netanyahu.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, you can't, it's amazing to watch it play out too. And that there's not, like, I hear from, say, people in the Jewish community who are not exactly thrilled with my views on Israel or some of the stuff I've publicly said over the last few years. And they'll talk, they'll talk about the threat of anti-Semitism and the spike in anti-Semitism over the last couple years. And I'll just say, I'll be like, okay, so just even from your worldview, do you think that's a coincidence that it's spiked in the last 2 years? Like, might this have something to do with what Israel is doing to these poor, helpless, captive people? Like, I mean, how can you defend? These are people who don't have an army to defend them, don't have a state of their own, that they've been denied by the Israeli government, and now you're just slaughtering them. I mean, how can you and it's almost just out of self-preservation, you would think, that like so many of these Jews would wake up and go, oh yeah, this is going to, like, it's some sick self-fulfilling prophecy where, yeah, you are actually going to create a situation where it's unsafe for Jewish people, and you've already created a situation that's very unsafe for the Palestinians. Like, what are we doing here? So let me say, phrase it like this. So, because I do think something like, to me, with the Charlie Kirk thing, there's almost like there's three areas that I'd kind of separate here, where there's the really interesting stuff that we've been talking about, which is like, what exactly was going on with Charlie Kirk? Like, where was he in the, look, Charlie Kirk, like I said on my show the other day, I said, at the very least, he wasn't Ben Shapiro. People are acting like he was just Ben Shapiro and that's it. And it's like, well, Ben Shapiro ain't hosting me and moderating a debate between me and someone else. He's not hosting Tucker and Megyn Kelly. So like, clearly there was this battle. So that's a very interesting component, particularly because, the Netanyahu and they're all trying to use his death already. And so if they want to play that card, it's like, well, let's actually have a very interesting discussion about what it was like to be someone who was trying to corral young people and toe the Zionist line over the last few months. Then there's also which, I'm sure both of us will talk about going forward. It's like how this is going to be weaponized and used. And I'm not just talking about like the Jimmy Kimmel stuff, but I'm talking about Pam Bondi talking about how this is proof we need to fight hate speech at like anti-Semitism, like AKA the pro-Palestinian left-wingers now need to be cracked down on. So we'll see what happens with that. But then there's the other component of it, which I do want to ask you about before we're out of time, which is just the actual assassination itself. Now, I have been battling a bit even with my own audience at time here, where I've been just saying for the whole week that like a lot of people are jumping on this Israel did it theory, and I'm like, look guys, there really just is no evidence for this, and we don't want to all come off like kooks and kind of like partially just on the face of it, I don't want to promote something that's untrue. I don't want people to believe something that's not true. And then right after that, you're like, guys, let's not discredit the entire critical of Israel movement by doing what it seems to me that a majority of the internet is doing, which is just jumping on this thing because that's the conclusion they prefer. But then there is also another component, which is like, there are some legitimate questions about the actual event, which are like, I've had a few different things that have raised my eyebrows while reading it. So in terms of the actual assassination, I mean, I know you said in your article there's no evidence to suggest Israel is behind this. What are your thoughts on that, the people who are jumping on board with that conspiracy, and anything that is an oddity to you about the actual assassination?
Well, yeah, I've said that in multiple interviews too, that I don't have any evidence of an Israeli government or Israeli role in Charlie Kirk's killing. I stick to the facts. That's why I'm still here. The reason that this resonates, the idea that Israel played a role resonates, is Netanyahu himself and Israel in general maintain power through lying, manipulation, intimidation, and assassination, especially assassination. And Netanyahu rose to power after the killing of Yitzhak Rabin, his main political rival, and Leah Rabin, Rabin's wife, said Netanyahu incited his murder. Netanyahu marched in front of a mock coffin that said Rabin on it just days before the murder. I mean, and then Netanyahu's coalition partners, Ben Gvir, et cetera, they are like the spiritual heirs of Yigal Amir, who assassinated Rabin. So this is like Netanyahu's MO. He just tried to assassinate the entire negotiating team of Hamas inside a U.S. ally. And Israel has global assassination squads. But, you know, what they would have done and what they were planning to do, and you could already see Laura Loomer rolling out the campaign, was to character assassinate Charlie Kirk if he continued to go off message. Yep. That's what they do. That's what they did to me. And, you know, if I got like an op-ed in the New York Times, not that I would want to, they would try to destroy my reputation. That's what they're doing to Candace Owens. Like, I don't believe they're going to send a sniper to take out Candace Owens, but I hope she has good security because, you know, they want to inspire some vigilante or something, but it's not like the Mossad's MO to go inside a U.S. ally and do this. At the same time, there's another reason why why people are spinning out their own theories. And I don't want to attack these people, actually. Like, I think, you know, people should be asking questions. We are not witnessing a credible investigation into Charlie Kirk's killing. Starting with the text messages, the exchange between this shooter, Tyler Robinson, and his supposed furry trans lover, roommate, they read like something written by a 65-year-old federal law enforcement officer.
That is true.
And the words being used are something I've never heard 22-year-old people using, even as a Gen Xer when I was 22. Nobody said, I'm going to retrieve the weapon from the vehicle and leave it at the drop point. Andrew Colvett yesterday declaring that there's no exit wound because Charlie Kirk had a spine of steel. That doesn't inspire confidence. He's told that by the ER doctor. And shouldn't the ER doctor be telling the media, or the FBI should be telling the media that that's why there's no exit wound? Why are we learning that from basically the spokesman for Charlie Kirk?
It also was like it did have a very like Ghost of Kiev type feel to the story. Like, I'm sure that makes some people feel nice, but could we get back to what's plausibly real and not just like these made up stories? But yes, I agree.
Now we're hearing it was a World War I era, I guess Mauser rifle, and therefore it didn't have a serial number. Unusual. The removal of the camera from behind Charlie Kirk. Again, this is like what people are talking about. This is what the internet's talking about. I'm not just like trying to present to you the theory of the crime. But a staffer for TPUSA removed a camera that was filming behind Charlie Kirk, which would provide a lot of, I think, visual context on where the shot came from, and remove the SD cards. And Andrew Colvett goes out and says he did the right thing in the middle of a crime scene to remove the SD cards. And the FBI has the footage, but he's someone who loved Charlie Kirk. I don't know what the FBI is saying about this. There are so many other odd issues here. The photo of Tyler Robinson at the Dairy Queen 15 minutes after the shooting, the comments by federal law enforcement that Tyler Robinson took 1 minute on the roof to carry out this operation, which I think would be difficult to do even for a professional sniper. And the jerking of Charlie Kirk's head, I guess he's according to the official version is he's hit from the front on the left side of his neck, but his head jerks that way. And so many people are formulating the theory that he was actually shot from behind to his right. And so we're at a point where anyone who's paying attention, who's paying close attention, who isn't like invested in the TPUSA MAGA franchise is not going to believe the official story at this point. And there have just been so many failures on the part of Kash Patel and the FBI as well. So the theories are going to continue to abound, and some of them will focus on Israel. And it really doesn't help to have Netanyahu go out twice, first on Newsmax, which is a vehicle for Israeli influence, taking money from the Israeli foreign ministry, and then on his own personal prime minister channel to deny killing Charlie Kirk. Like, when have you ever seen a foreign leader just on his own voluntarily deny killing a major U.S. public figure? It's just a little weird.
No, I mean, look, that there is no question that's right, and there even for someone like me who's been saying, like, hey, we really shouldn't jump to conclusions, and there's no evidence Israel was actually involved in the assassination. I wouldn't be honest if I didn't admit that I do in some way think that they deserve this presumption of guilt that they're getting, and I do think you're absolutely right, particularly coming off of the heels of which, by the way, ironically was the topic that got all these Zionist donors so mad at Charlie Kirk at the event, was that Megyn and Tucker were talking about the Trump administration burying the Epstein stuff. And off the heels of that cover up, it's like this administration, this FBI, this Justice Department just have no credibility amongst, their voters, that if Israel was involved in this, nobody has confidence that they would actually get to the bottom of it and tell the truth. Look, to be clear, I don't think any of us should jump to any conclusions. And like you said, sticking to the facts, that's the best course of action here. Can
I make one other point?
Sure. Absolutely. Let me just quickly say that I certainly am not telling anybody to stop asking questions or to stop investigating or to stop being suspicious. So that's always healthy. But yes, final point to you, and then I'll let you go.
Yeah. I mean, feel free to do your own research. Well, I would accept that Tyler Robinson could have done this alone, and that he could have been motivated by Charlie Kirk's anti-trans commentary, that this was some kind of trans shooting. Like there could have been a component of mental illness there as well. I can accept that. But does that mean that Tyler Robinson is a leftist? If he was on some of these weird nihilistic Discord channels, which are themselves penetrated or at least surveilled by federal law enforcement, was he a leftist or was he a Democrat or a progressive? If they could show that he was at No Kings rallies holding up signs like calling Trump a pedophile or something, then I'd be like, all right, well, there it is. And like, the No Kings rallies went too far, run with it. But the narrative is already set. The narrative is and this is what the Trump administration has been trying to do all along, is keep the United States in a perpetual state of emergency in order to expand the power of the executive and the surveillance state and Palantir to surveil us, control us, and consolidate the power of his very narrow sectarian movement. And this is the perfect opportunity for them to do it. And we have to be very aware of what's going on and question not just the official story, but who Tyler Robinson really was. Because when Charlie Kirk was shot at Utah Valley University, he was being protested by a group of progressive students. One was holding up a sign that said Free Palestine. Another one had like a pro-LGBTQ sign. Another had a sign, maybe denouncing Charlie Kirk's comments on race or something. And they were interviewed by a pro-Trump videographer. I just watched this. I'll tweet the video out later. And he was challenging them. And they said, and they said that we don't hate anyone here. We still love them. We just disagree with them and think they're being misled. Then he starts challenging them on Palestine and Hamas. They condemned political violence immediately. They said, we just don't think like, we just are like, we want to debate this. That's really like the progressive left, as I understand it. They're not really going to get on a roof with a sniper rifle and settle things that way. They're waiting for the next midterm election.
Yeah.
And that's who is being implicated as the killers here. We're talking about like 50% of the country. That's who Trump is implicated. And they want this civil war. They want to pit us against each other because what does Palantir's CEO, Alex Karp, describe as his business model? It's preventing social unrest from affecting or disrupting the lives of the 1% who sponsors him. That's what he openly says. So let's be level-headed here. Let's not get carried away, and let's be strategic. the most threatening thing right now is not is unity against those forces of surveillance, of apartheid, of genocide, of authoritarian control of the United States, and the profiting from surveillance that Palantir represents. So I think that's another reason why it's important to question not just the official story, but the direction that this assassination is being taken. And it's also why it's so why someone like Candace Owens is so threatening to the right, is because she's making it more difficult for them to just simply pin this on the left conveniently and then take away our civil liberties.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. And that's always, I mean, that's always their go-to.
I mean, the Democrats would have do it too if like someone had, shot Biden, they would have shut down Elon's Twitter X,
Yeah, but the truth is that, every day Sean Hannity says the far left Nancy Pelosi or whatever, and then that's supposed to mean 50% of the country is the left and the other 50% is the right, as if they're all the same thing, as if Hillary Clinton and your liberal mom and some 20-year-old gender studies major are all the same thing or something, when really the dynamic is always that Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell are the same thing, and that actually they're your enemy and your fellow countrymen are not. And they always want to make it so that you think your fellow countrymen are your enemy, so that you don't focus on the fact that it's actually them. And it's like you said, the constant state of war, perpetual emergency, and perpetual support for Israel, which all seem to somewhat be interrelated.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a strategy of tension that is taking hold right now. And I think, we're in the double digits in this country of people who just are done with the duopoly, the corporate duopoly, and are willing to put aside the culture war to actually have real change and basically unite against the 0.1% and the war state. But we don't have a vehicle, and we're basically not allowed to run in either party. So we're just kind of out here in our podcast world.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. But at the very least, we've been given more of a level playing field than ever. And part of the dynamic that we were talking about there with Charlie Kirk and the young people is that us, and I say this very broadly, but we've just been kicking their ass in the general debate. And I mean, that's just the bottom line. Like, we just keep winning and they keep losing, and support keeps because they're defending the indefensible. And once it's just like there's a reason why they rely on censorship and propaganda, because their ideas can't really stand up. But listen, we won
in the marketplace of ideas. We won, so they're going to call it all hate speech,
right? Yeah,
and and then leaving the only avenue, political violence. So I mean, we just want to debate.
Yes, 100%. Max, thank you so much. Please, if you guys weren't already familiar with his work, make sure to go check out Max Blumenthal. Anything specific that you want to promote? You said you're going to have a new piece on this out soon.
Well, if you follow Dave Smith, then you probably have some overlap with me, and you'll hear about it soon. So, the Gray Zone. Subscribe to us on YouTube or Substack, and you'll find out about it.
All right, Max Blumenthal, thank you very much for coming on. Thank you for everything you do, and I hope we get to do this again sometime soon.
Thanks a lot.